She sat on the worn piano bench in the corner of the small music room, her fingers lightly touching the keys as if greeting old friends. The afternoon sun streamed through the dusty window, casting thin lines of light across the sheet music scattered on the piano. For her, this was home, even if it wasn't a grand concert hall. The room smelled faintly of old wood and polish, and every note she played seemed to fill the space with warmth. She had been playing since she was 6, and over the years, the piano had become a part of her, almost like another limb. Every time she practiced, she felt closer to something she could not fully explain, a connection to a world beyond her small town. Her parents often watched quietly from the doorway. They had no idea that one day their daughter might be recognized by the world, but they knew that music made her come alive. She wasn't just hitting keys. She was telling stories, feeling every rise and fall of the melody. Her mother, who worked at the local library, often said, "You play as if you've lived 1,000 lives." Her father, a carpenter, could never read sheet music but always nodded in silent admiration, noticing how she lost herself in the music. In the evenings, when the house was quiet, she would practice even longer. Sometimes she would record herself, listening back to hear where she could improve, where she could push herself further. She knew the path ahead would not be easy. Talent was important, but talent alone was never enough. She had seen people with talent fade away because they did not work hard or lacked the courage to perform in front of others. She had promised herself she would not be one of them. Her life changed the day she received the invitation. It came in a simple envelope with gold lettering from the production company of a famous live television show that featured talented young musicians. She read it over and over, barely daring to believe it was real. They had seen her performance at a local competition and wanted her to perform on live TV. Her heart raced at the thought. She had never imagined stepping into a world so big, where millions might watch her play. She felt excitement, fear, and a strange kind of disbelief all at once. Her parents were equally stunned but supportive. They had always encouraged her, but this was different. This was the kind of opportunity that could change her life. Her mother hugged her tightly, whispering, "You've worked so hard for this. Just be yourself and enjoy it." Her father smiled, a mixture of pride and worry in his eyes, and said, "Show them what you've got. They'll remember you." The preparations began immediately. Every day she practiced with more intensity. She focused not only on technical perfection but also on emotion, on expressing the story behind each note. She wanted every person watching to feel what she felt, to connect to the music in a way words could never achieve. She studied videos of other musicians who had performed on live television, noting how they carried themselves, how they breathed between notes, how they commanded the audience without even speaking. At the same time, she became aware of the world she was entering. The show would be hosted by a world-famous maestro, a man known for his brilliant performances but also for his harsh critiques. He had built his career on perfection and was notorious for embarrassing performers who fell short of his standards. Stories of young musicians being ridiculed on stage were common, and some had even walked away from music entirely. The thought of facing someone like him sent shivers down her spine, but she refused to let it deter her. She knew that fear was part of growth and that confronting it could lead to triumph. The days leading up to the live show were a whirlwind of rehearsals, interviews, and preparation. She visited the studio several times, learning the layout, practicing under the bright stage lights, and getting used to the cameras that would capture every movement. Even though the environment was intimidating, she tried to focus on the music. She reminded herself that the piano, her constant companion, had been with her through every challenge. It would guide her now as well. Her teachers were amazed at her dedication. They had seen her grow from a shy child into a confident young musician. One evening, during a late practice session, her main piano teacher sat beside her, watching her play through a complex classical piece. "You have the talent," the teacher said gently. "But don't forget, it's also about courage. Courage to play even when someone doubts you, even when the world is watching. That is what will set you apart." The night before the performance, she hardly slept. She reviewed the piece she would perform, running through difficult passages in her mind, imagining herself in the concert hall. She pictured the audience, the cameras, the lights, and most importantly, the maestro. His reputation loomed over her thoughts, a mixture of respect and fear. She knew that this man had never failed to impress. And yet, in her heart, she felt a quiet determination. She had worked tirelessly, and no one could take her preparation or her love for the music away. When the morning of the live show arrived, she woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Her parents offered calm reassurance, reminding her that this was a chance to share her passion, not just to prove herself. As they drove to the studio, she gazed out of the window at the passing streets, familiar scenes of her hometown, and felt a strange sense of grounding. No matter what happened today, she knew where she came from and what she had worked for. Backstage, the energy was electric. Performers moved hurriedly, tuning instruments, whispering last-minute encouragement, and trying to calm their nerves. She found a quiet corner and sat at the piano set up for her rehearsal. The keys felt cold under her fingers, but as soon as she began to play, the familiar rhythm and melody brought a sense of peace. For a few minutes, she allowed herself to be fully immersed in the music, blocking out everything else. This was her world, and she was ready. Then she was called to the stage. Walking under the bright lights, she could hear the faint hum of the audience and the soft clicking of cameras. Her heart pounded, but she took a deep breath and reminded herself of her promise. To play with courage, to let the music speak. As she approached the piano, she caught a glimpse of the maestro sitting at the front row, his sharp eyes observing her every move. He gave a slight nod, and she felt the weight of his expectation. For a moment, doubt crept in, but she shook it off. When she sat at the piano, she adjusted the bench, placed her hands on the keys, and closed her eyes for a brief second. She remembered all those hours of practice, every mistake corrected, every melody repeated until it was perfect. She opened her eyes, and the audience seemed to fade away. It was just her and the piano, the familiar black and white keys waiting to tell their story. She began to play. The notes flowed smoothly at first, soft and deliberate, each one carrying emotion. She felt the music rise within her, guiding her fingers with an almost magical force. The audience leaned in, captivated by the delicate touch and expressive phrasing. Even the maestro, known for his stern expressions, leaned forward slightly, a flicker of curiosity in his eyes. She was no longer just a teenager on stage. She was a storyteller, a conduit for the music, commanding attention with grace and subtle power. As the piece progressed, her confidence grew. She tackled the difficult passages with precision, her fingers moving almost effortlessly across the keys. Each note resonated with clarity, and the audience could feel the depth of her emotion. The maestro's eyes narrowed slightly, a mixture of scrutiny and surprise, but she did not falter. She had expected judgment, and she had prepared herself to rise above it. This was her moment, and she embraced it fully. By the end of the performance, the room was silent for a heartbeat, as if everyone was catching their breath. Then, the applause erupted, filling the studio with sound. The teen bowed slightly, her face glowing, and felt a rush of relief and joy. She had done it. She had faced the fear, the challenge, and the presence of the world-famous maestro, and she had not only survived but shone. Backstage, she could hear the whispers of admiration and see the smiles of fellow performers. Her parents stood in the audience, clapping proudly, tears in their eyes. She realized that this was only the beginning, but it was a beginning she would always remember. The lights of the studio were dazzling, brighter than anything she had ever seen. The stage stretched out before her, grand and imposing, with polished floors that reflected every movement. The audience sat in neat rows, their faces eager, some smiling, others whispering to one another. The energy in the room was thick, charged with anticipation. She could hear the faint rustle of programs and the soft hum of cameras being adjusted. Every sound reminded her that this was no ordinary stage. This was the world she had dreamed of reaching, but now that she was here, it felt larger, almost intimidating. She walked toward the piano, her steps measured but steady. Her heart raced, and her palms were slightly sweaty, but she kept reminding herself that she had prepared for this moment. Every note she had practiced, every hour spent in solitude, all the struggles and triumphs led to this point. She took a deep breath and sat down on the piano bench, feeling the smooth surface beneath her. The keys looked almost different under the bright lights, almost alive, as if they were waiting for her to tell their story. Then, she heard it, a voice cutting through the murmurs of the audience. It was the maestro, seated in the front row, his expression sharp and critical. He spoke into the microphone, addressing the audience as well as the cameras. His words were not kind. He described the upcoming performance with a hint of mockery, questioning whether such a young, inexperienced musician could handle the challenge. His tone carried the weight of authority and expectation, and every word seemed designed to unsettle her. She felt a twinge of fear, but she refused to let it take control. She reminded herself that she had faced difficult pieces in practice, that she had overcome her doubts countless times before. The applause of the audience signaled that it was her turn. She lifted her hands to the keys, feeling the familiar coolness against her fingers. She began with a soft, deliberate introduction, letting the notes flow gently. At first, she played cautiously, aware of the maestro's gaze, aware of every eye in the room. The music was tentative, careful, but there was beauty in its precision. The audience listened quietly, some leaning forward, captivated by the delicate sound. It didn't take long before the maestro spoke again. His critique was sharp and public. He leaned forward, his eyes narrowing, and questioned her timing and phrasing. He suggested that she might be overestimating her abilities, that perhaps this piece was too complex for someone of her age. The words stung. Her fingers hesitated slightly, a momentary tremor running through her hands. The audience shifted, sensing the tension, the clash between the young musician and the renowned maestro. Despite the humiliation, she took a deep breath and reminded herself why she was here. She was not performing for approval or fear. She was performing for the music, for the connection it created. She closed her eyes for a moment, blocking out the criticism and focusing on the melody, on the story she wanted to tell through each note. The piano became her shield, the music her voice. Slowly, she regained her confidence, letting the notes flow with more certainty, more emotion. The room seemed to quiet around her, as if the audience itself was holding its breath, waiting for her next move. The maestro's criticism continued, though now it carried a different tone. He pointed out passages that he believed were weak or lacking expression. He challenged her to reach a part of the composition that he himself had once failed to complete in public performances. The audience murmured in surprise, some eyes widening, realizing the weight of his challenge. The piece she was playing was no ordinary composition. It was complex, technically demanding, and emotionally intense. Even the most seasoned musicians found it difficult, and now she was expected to continue under the gaze of a man whose reputation was legendary. For a moment, fear threatened to overtake her. She remembered the stories she had heard of young performers who had crumbled under such pressure, their dreams shattered in a single performance. But then she remembered her practice, her late nights, her dedication, and the joy that music had always given her. She took another deep breath, centering herself, and began to play again. This time her approach was bolder, more determined. She would not let humiliation define her performance. As her fingers moved across the keys, she felt a transformation. The music no longer seemed like a set of notes to be memorized, but a living, breathing story she was telling to everyone in the room. Each chord resonated with emotion, each scale flowing naturally, as if the piano and she were communicating without words. She could feel the audience leaning in, drawn into the narrative she was weaving. Even the maestro, known for his critical nature, appeared momentarily taken aback. His stern expression softened slightly as he listened, perhaps realizing that this young musician was more capable than he had anticipated. She pressed on, navigating the difficult passages with precision and grace. Her hands moved confidently, each note intentional, each phrase carefully shaped. The music filled the space, creating an atmosphere that was both intense and captivating. She could feel the room responding, the audience swaying slightly with the rhythm, some faces showing awe, others showing curiosity and admiration. The tension between the maestro and herself remained, but it was now countered by a sense of accomplishment, a growing awareness of her own strength and resilience. The maestro's interruptions became less frequent, his critiques quieter. It was as if he recognized that she was rising to the challenge, that his attempts to unsettle her were no longer affecting the performance. The audience's energy shifted, moving from apprehension to excitement. Whispers of astonishment spread through the rows, as people realized they were witnessing a performance that was extraordinary not just for the technical skill, but for the emotional depth and courage it displayed. She reached the most difficult section of the piece, the part the maestro himself had failed to complete in previous performances. Her heart pounded, but she did not falter. She had prepared for this moment countless times, and she trusted her training and her instincts. Her fingers danced over the keys with speed and accuracy, each note ringing clearly, each phrase connecting seamlessly to the next. The audience leaned forward in anticipation, sensing the gravity of this moment. The room seemed to hold its breath as she pushed through the challenge, refusing to be intimidated by the maestro's past success or her own nerves. As she approached the final notes, a sense of triumph began to build within her. The humiliation she had felt earlier now seemed distant, replaced by determination and focus. She poured every ounce of emotion into the closing section, letting the music soar, fill the space, and carry her story to the audience. The maestro watched silently, no words now, only attentive eyes tracking each movement. The applause that erupted when she finished was thunderous, the sound echoing through the studio like a wave of recognition and admiration. She bowed slightly, feeling a mixture of relief and exhilaration. The audience's reaction was overwhelming. Some rose to their feet, others clapped loudly, and many whispered in awe at the courage and skill they had just witnessed. Backstage, her fellow performers looked at her with newfound respect, and even the crew members could not hide their smiles. The young pianist felt a surge of pride, not just for completing the piece, but for confronting the fear, the embarrassment, and the critical gaze of the world-famous maestro. As she stepped away from the piano, she caught a brief glance from the maestro. His expression was unreadable, a mixture of contemplation and surprise. For the first time, she sensed that he recognized her talent, perhaps even his own misjudgment. She did not wait for his approval, however. The applause and the sense of accomplishment were enough. She had faced one of the greatest challenges of her young career, and had emerged not only unbroken but stronger and more confident. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Interviews and camera flashes followed, but she remained focused on the experience she had just lived through. She had discovered something important about herself, the ability to rise above criticism, to transform fear into performance, and to connect with people through the language of music. That night, as she returned home, she could not stop smiling. She knew that this performance was more than a test. It was a turning point, a moment that would shape the rest of her life and career. She had faced humiliation, met it with courage, and turned it into triumph. The memory of the maestro's sharp words no longer frightened her. Instead, it reminded her of what she was capable of achieving when she believed in herself. She sat quietly backstage for a moment, letting the sound of the applause fade into a memory. Her hands still tingled from the performance, and her heart raced with excitement and adrenaline. She knew that the most challenging part of her journey was still ahead. The piece she was about to play next was one that had defeated even the most accomplished musicians, including the maestro himself. It was a test not just of skill, but of courage, patience, and self-belief. She could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on her, but she also felt a strange sense of calm. She had faced fear before, and she had learned that the music could guide her through even the toughest moments. She took a deep breath, centering herself. Her mind replayed hours of practice, countless repetitions of the difficult passages, and late nights spent perfecting every detail. She remembered her teacher's words. Courage was as important as talent. Courage meant playing even when the world was watching, even when doubt whispered in her ear, even when the pressure seemed unbearable. She closed her eyes for a second and imagined the piano beneath her fingers, the keys familiar and welcoming, ready to tell their story. The challenge no longer felt like an enemy. It felt like a partner, a puzzle she was eager to solve. The stage crew called her forward again. She walked with steady steps, feeling the bright stage lights warm her skin and the murmur of the audience surround her like a soft wave. She approached the piano and adjusted the bench, taking a moment to settle in. The room was silent, as if holding its breath in anticipation. She placed her hands on the keys, feeling their familiar texture, and closed her eyes. The first notes she played were soft and tentative, almost like a whisper, but they carried her confidence and intention. Each note seemed to anchor her more firmly in the moment, and she allowed the music to flow naturally. As the piece grew in complexity, she felt a mixture of focus and freedom. Her fingers moved with precision, navigating the intricate passages that had once seemed impossible. Every chord, every arpeggio, was deliberate and expressive. The audience leaned in, captivated by the depth of emotion in her playing. She was not just performing a piece of music. She was telling a story, one that only she could tell. The maestro, sitting in the front row, watched closely, his sharp gaze following every movement. She could feel the weight of his reputation and expertise, but instead of intimidating her, it fueled her determination. The difficult section approached, the part that the maestro had failed to complete in his own performances. Her heart raced, but she reminded herself to breathe, to trust her preparation. She had practiced this passage countless times, learning to anticipate every twist and turn. As her fingers danced across the keys, the music seemed to guide her, each note flowing into the next with a natural grace. The tension in the room was palpable, the audience sensing the magnitude of the moment. Her mind was focused, her body calm, and her spirit fully present. She was no longer just a young pianist on stage. She was a force of determination and artistry. For a moment, she felt the weight of the maestro's past success, the shadow of his achievements looming over her performance. But she chose not to compare herself to him or to let his reputation define her. Instead, she focused on the music, on the story she wanted to tell, on the emotion she wanted to convey. Every note was a declaration of her courage, every phrase a testament to her persistence. She felt a quiet strength growing within her, a realization that she could meet any challenge if she remained true to herself and her passion. The audience was captivated. Some held their breath, others leaned forward, unable to look away. She could feel their attention like a wave, carrying her forward, giving her energy and confidence. The maestro's expression remained serious, his eyes intense, but she sensed a flicker of surprise, perhaps even admiration. She pressed on, navigating the most demanding passages with precision and expression. Her fingers moved almost effortlessly, the hours of practice translating into a performance that was both technically brilliant and emotionally compelling. As she neared the climax of the piece, she allowed herself to fully embrace the music. Her hands flew over the keys, but every movement was intentional, every note carefully shaped. She felt a sense of liberation, a joy that came from rising above fear and embracing the challenge. The audience was silent, captivated by the power and beauty of her performance. She could feel the intensity of the moment, the connection between herself, the piano, and everyone in the room. It was a shared experience, a story being told without words, and she was at the center of it. The final notes approached, each one carrying a sense of triumph and release. She played with confidence, with grace, and with emotion that resonated throughout the hall. The difficult passages she had once feared now felt like familiar friends, guiding her to the conclusion of the piece. As the last note faded, there was a heartbeat of silence, a collective pause as the audience processed what they had witnessed. Then, the applause erupted, filling the studio with a wave of sound that was both overwhelming and exhilarating. She sat for a moment, letting the energy wash over her, feeling a mixture of relief, joy, and pride. The maestro rose from his seat, and for the first time, she saw a small smile on his face. It was subtle, but it carried weight, a recognition of her talent, determination, and courage. The audience continued to applaud, some standing, some shouting in admiration. She bowed slightly, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment. She had faced the greatest challenge of her young career and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more connected to her music than ever before. Backstage, her fellow performers and the crew congratulated her. There were smiles, handshakes, and whispers of admiration. She felt a warmth spreading through her, a sense of belonging in the world she had always dreamed of. She had not only performed a difficult piece, she had faced fear, humiliation, and doubt, and had turned it into triumph. Her parents watched from the audience, their faces glowing with pride and joy. They knew that this moment would stay with her forever, a milestone that marked the beginning of something extraordinary. Later, as she walked off the stage and returned to the quiet backstage area, she allowed herself a moment to reflect. She had discovered an inner strength she had not fully realized, a resilience that would serve her in the many challenges to come. She understood now that true growth came from facing difficulties head-on, from embracing the fear and uncertainty, and from trusting in her preparation and passion. The Maestro's past reputation and sharp critique no longer intimidated her. Instead, they had become part of her journey, shaping her performance and her confidence. That night, as she returned home, the experience lingered in her mind like a vivid dream. She replayed the music, the emotions, the applause, and the Maestro's subtle acknowledgement. She knew that this performance was more than a personal victory. It was a message to herself and to anyone who might face doubt and criticism. Courage, preparation, and passion could overcome even the most formidable challenges. She had risen above fear and doubt, and in doing so, had discovered the true power of her music and her own potential. The auditorium was alive with anticipation, the bright lights creating a golden glow over the stage. The teen pianist approached the piano with a steady pace, her heart thumping but her mind focused. She had faced the most difficult section of the piece in rehearsal, and now it was time to give it everything she had. The audience was silent, the tension almost tangible, as if everyone present could feel the weight of the moment. She settled onto the bench, adjusted her posture, and placed her fingers gently on the keys. The piano seemed to welcome her, as though it knew the story they were about to tell together. The first notes she played were deliberate and confident. Each sound resonated through the hall, rich and clear, capturing the attention of every listener. She let the music guide her, feeling it flow through her, moving from her fingers to the audience. The opening was soft yet compelling, drawing the listeners in slowly, preparing them for the journey ahead. She played with a calm intensity, aware of every nuance, every pause, and every dynamic change. As the piece gained momentum, her fingers moved with fluid precision, navigating intricate runs and complex harmonies. She could feel the energy of the room responding to her performance, a ripple of awe passing through the audience. The Maestro, sitting in the front row, watched intently, his sharp expression betraying curiosity and perhaps a hint of concern. He had never seen this young pianist play with such maturity and control, and it was becoming increasingly clear that she was surpassing expectations. She reached the most challenging section, the part the Maestro had struggled with for years. Her hands moved rapidly but gracefully, each note articulated perfectly. The technical difficulty was immense, but she remained composed, letting the music flow naturally. She felt a sense of liberation, an exhilarating joy that came from conquering fear and doubt. The audience was completely absorbed, leaning forward in anticipation, hanging on to every note. The hall was filled with a sense of shared experience, a connection between performer and listeners that transcended words. Her emotions guided the interpretation of the piece, giving it a depth and richness that went beyond technical skill. Every chord, every arpeggio, was imbued with feeling, creating a tapestry of sound that resonated deeply. She played with passion, precision, and courage, transforming the challenge into an opportunity to express her artistry. The music became a dialogue between herself, the piano, and the audience, each responding to the other in an unspoken understanding. the maestro's expression shifted subtly. His initial skepticism had given way to fascination. He watched as the young pianist tackled passages he had once found impossible, executing them flawlessly with emotion and grace. There was a quiet acknowledgement in his eyes, a recognition of her talent and determination. The room seemed to hold its breath as she continued, the tension building to a climax that was both dramatic and beautiful. As she reached the final section, the hall was completely silent except for the music. The notes soared, echoing with power and elegance, carrying the story to its emotional conclusion. Her fingers moved with confidence, and every chord resonated perfectly, leaving no doubt about her mastery. The audience was captivated, sensing the significance of the performance. They could feel her courage, her passion, and her triumph, and it left them in awe. When the last note rang out, there was a moment of stillness, a pause that seemed to stretch forever. Then the applause began, slowly at first, then swelling into a powerful wave of sound. People rose to their feet, cheering and clapping, unable to contain their admiration. The teen pianist bowed, her face glowing with relief, pride, and joy. She had done it. She had played the piece that the maestro could not finish and had done so with brilliance and emotion. The audience's reaction was overwhelming, a testament to the impact of her performance. The maestro stood as well, slowly applauding, a subtle but unmistakable acknowledgement of her talent. His expression was composed, but there was a trace of respect, a recognition that this young musician had achieved something extraordinary. The audience noticed the shift, realizing that the maestro's authority had been challenged by the courage and skill of the teen pianist. It was a moment of triumph not only for her but for the power of determination and passion over intimidation. Backstage, fellow performers and crew members were in awe, offering congratulations and words of praise. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction, knowing that her dedication and courage had brought her to this moment. Her parents' proud faces shone from the audience, tears of joy in their eyes. She had not only faced the fear of performing under scrutiny but had turned it into an unforgettable triumph. The experience reinforced her belief in herself and in the power of perseverance. As she walked away from the piano, she reflected on the journey that had led to this point. Every hour of practice, every challenge overcome, and every moment of doubt had contributed to this performance. She realized that true success was not just about technical mastery but also about courage, focus, and the ability to connect with others through art. The applause still echoed in her ears, a reminder that she had made a lasting impression. The audience continued to cheer as the lights dimmed slightly, signaling the end of the segment. She allowed herself a moment to breathe, savoring the sense of accomplishment and the joy of sharing her music with the world. She had transformed fear and humiliation into strength and inspiration, proving that talent combined with determination could overcome even the most daunting challenges. Later, in the quiet of the dressing room, she replayed the performance in her mind. She remembered every note, every chord, and every expression, feeling a deep satisfaction in how she had risen to the occasion. The maestro's subtle acknowledgement had validated her efforts, but she also knew that the true reward was the connection she had created with the audience and the personal triumph she had experienced. That night, as she returned home, she carried with her a sense of accomplishment and growth. The performance had been a defining moment, one that would stay with her forever. She had faced criticism, intimidation, and fear, and had emerged stronger, more confident, and more passionate about her music. The experience reinforced her belief that dedication, courage, and love for one's art could overcome any obstacle. She had not only played a difficult piece but had also made a statement about resilience, talent, and the power of the human spirit. The excitement of the performance lingered long after the lights dimmed and the cameras stopped rolling. Backstage, the teen pianist was greeted by a flood of congratulations from fellow performers, crew members, and producers. Each word of praise felt like a validation of years of hard work and countless hours of practice. She felt a warmth spreading through her chest, a mixture of pride, relief, and happiness. For the first time, She truly understood the power of persistence and courage in achieving something extraordinary. News of her performance spread quickly. Clips of the broadcast went viral, shared across social media and news websites. Viewers were captivated by her skill, her emotional depth, and the courage she displayed in front of a world-famous maestro. Comments poured in from all over, praising her talent and the way she had handled the challenge. Many remarked on how she had not only played the piece flawlessly but had also brought it to life, making even the most difficult passages seem effortless. The recognition was overwhelming, and she felt both honored and humbled. Her parents were beside themselves with pride. They had watched their daughter grow from a shy child with a passion for music into a confident young pianist who had captured the attention of the world. Her mother hugged her tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face, whispering, "We always knew you were special, but this is beyond anything we imagined." Her father nodded, a mixture of pride and disbelief in his eyes, saying, "You've shown everyone what dedication and heart can achieve. This is only the beginning." Even the maestro, who had initially been critical and dismissive, could not ignore her talent. After the show, he approached her quietly. There was a calm in his demeanor that had not been there before, a recognition of her ability and determination. "You have a rare gift," he said softly, his voice carrying a hint of respect, "and courage that matches it. I misjudged you. Your performance tonight was exceptional." Those words, coming from someone so renowned, meant more to her than any applause could. She nodded, feeling a sense of validation and the acknowledgement of someone she had respected, even if he had once intimidated her. Opportunities began to open up almost immediately. Invitations to perform at prestigious events, scholarships to music programs, and offers from well-known instructors flooded in. Every opportunity was a new step toward building her future, a chance to share her music with a wider audience and continue to grow as a musician. She approached each offer thoughtfully, considering how it aligned with her passion for music and her desire to continue learning and improving. She understood that success was not just about fame or recognition, but about continuous growth and dedication to her art. Despite the sudden attention, she remained grounded. She continued to practice diligently, remembering the hours of preparation that had brought her to this point. Every day, she returned to the piano with the same curiosity, passion, and dedication that had driven her since childhood. She knew that talent alone was not enough. It required constant nurturing and hard work. She also made time to help younger students, sharing her experiences and encouraging them to pursue their passions with courage and perseverance. Her story became an inspiration to many young musicians around the world. They saw in her performance not just technical brilliance but the courage to face challenges head-on, the ability to transform fear into triumph, and the importance of dedication and practice. Music schools and academies invited her to give masterclasses, sharing her insights and experiences. Each interaction reminded her that her journey was not just about personal achievement, but about encouraging others to find their own voices through music. The experience also left a lasting impact on the maestro. He became more reflective, recognizing that even young, relatively unknown musicians could possess extraordinary talent and resilience. He quietly began mentoring her, offering guidance without criticism, and observing how her approach to music and performance challenged some of his own assumptions. Their relationship evolved into one of mutual respect, a reminder that learning and growth are continuous, no matter one's age or reputation. The teen pianist's confidence continued to grow. She no longer feared criticism or failure. Instead, she saw them as opportunities to improve and learn. She performed at concerts, competitions, and charity events, each time carrying with her the lessons from that pivotal live television performance. Audiences were drawn not only to her technical skill but also to the emotion and sincerity she brought to her music. She realized that true artistry was not measured by applause alone but by the ability to move and connect with people through performance. Over time, she balanced her growing public recognition with her personal life. She remained close to her family, valuing their support and encouragement above all else. She kept her practice routine disciplined yet flexible, allowing her to explore new compositions and styles. Her life became a harmonious blend of opportunity, growth, and personal fulfillment. She understood that every performance, every note played, was a step in a lifelong journey of learning, expression, and connection. Looking back, she realized that the night she faced the world-famous Maestro on live television was a turning point in more ways than one. It was a moment that tested her courage, challenged her skills, and demanded every ounce of her determination. It also taught her the value of staying true to oneself, the importance of preparation and practice, and the power of music to transcend fear and doubt. She had turned a moment of potential humiliation into an unforgettable triumph, leaving a mark not only on her audience but also on herself. As she continued her journey, she remained humble, focused, and passionate. She knew that each performance was an opportunity to grow, to connect, and to inspire. The applause, the recognition, and the accolades were gratifying, but the true reward lay in the music itself, in the joy of expression, and in the knowledge that she had the courage to face any challenge. She had discovered that resilience, dedication, and belief in oneself could turn obstacles into triumphs, and that lesson would guide her throughout her life and career.